Hey gang, John Backrelly here with your Lake St. Clair Fishing Report, brought to you by Sportsmen's Direct. It is Wednesday, October 1st. Yep, we made it all the way till October. And water temperature, it's kind of like Groundhog Day. It's just the last 3 weeks we are stuck at 70 degrees out there at Belle Isle. Water temps around the lake and along the shorelines are a little bit cooler just because we've had a little bit cooler nights. So call it mid-60s out there for most of the lake, or mid to upper 60s, I should say, probably be more accurate. And we'd, it's not going to change until the weather really changes. That's just the way it is. Weather forecast going forward looks pretty darn good going through the weekend if you like warmer weather. We've got a little bit cooler nights, so lake's not gonna warm up or anything. Looks like the wind's gonna take a little more southerly flow going into the weekend. Winds are gonna be pretty light tomorrow, and then maybe pick up on Sunday in the afternoon, blowing a little harder out of the south, and then temperatures falling off, if I believe it, towards the middle to the end of next week. So about a week from now is when they're predicting the temps to fall back off into the low 60s, and then the temps at night to even drop lower yet, so like upper 40s. But we'll see. We've been, like I said, it's been like Groundhog Day, and with that, you got the satellite image, and it's showing the same thing as what we've been saying. Great satellite image, really clear, and the lake is really clear. So, if you like really clear water, then, the lake's still pretty darn clear. We haven't had anything to really upset that. No rain, no significant wind out of, hasn't blown hard enough out of any one direction to really tear anything up out there. Although you will see a lot of the weeds out there dying off now, and they're starting to get weak, and it doesn't take much. They're breaking off, and they're floating on the surface. There's kind of like grass floating all over out there. I was out in the kayak a couple of days ago, and water was gin clear, and there was just areas that were almost unfishable for casting just because there was just so much weed out there. So, it is what it is. It's the time of the year. Still getting lots of perch reports. Again, not to sound like Groundhog Day, but there's not much changing, guys. The activity is still out there by the shipping channel. Probably more activity to the north of the dumping grounds, like up around 19 and 20, and then all the way up in the channels and around the channel cuts and out by the lighthouse. I've had reports over by the B marker. So basically out in front of the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, out still pretty deep, over by the dumping grounds, all those deeper areas are still producing fish, but they're very isolated pockets of fish. So when you're on these different weed beds out there, you're going to really have to move around until you find the fish, or get in one of these spots along the shipping channel where the fish are moving, where you're getting a good flow of new fish moving through. And that was the case, I think, for a lot of the folks that were out there this weekend. We had a Lake St. Clair Walleye Association had a tournament. There's been 3 of the tournaments. There was one at Lakeside, I think it was a week or 2 ago. Then there was the weigh-in at our location this Saturday, and next weekend is going to be up at Anglers Point. So 3 tournaments in a row. And I will tell you this, from talking with all the contestants, one of the big factors for catching the bigger perch was in that clear water, using slip bobbers and getting away from the boat. Those big fish are definitely boat shy. I found that out there smallmouth fishing the other day in the kayak, and I saw, well, I'll get to that in a minute, but let's just say that fish were definitely boat shy even with the kayak, and that was being really quiet and drifting, not using the trolling motor, but just drifting through. Everything was pretty darn skittish, okay? But that water was just crystal clear. It was literally like looking in a pool. You could see the bottom so easy in most places. It was just kind of unbelievable. But that's what happens when we get the kind of weather that we've just had. So yeah, perch fishing, you're really going to want to, find those isolated pockets of fish. You're just going to have to move till you find them. And one of the tricks out there, and not enough of you guys are doing, is use that electric trolling motor, just like you would be when you're jigging walleyes. Only use that trolling motor to cover water quietly and find fish, and then maybe not even throw the anchor down in a lot of cases, just spot lock on them. And the other method you can use is kind of the opposite, is use that trolling motor and drag those mushroom anchors that you use for mudding and get an area dirtied up so that those fish will come underneath the boat. So that's another technique that a couple of guys I know use out there, is they'll actually dirty their own water up, and those fish will feel more comfortable, and then they will come underneath the boat. So, just a little bit of food for thought for you guys out there chasing those perch. Now the smallies, talking with, or actually following Garrett Samsel out there, they're still catching a lot of smallies up there in the north end of the lake. And he just mentioned in one of his posts that they really got into them shallow, which doesn't surprise me at all, because talking with our local guides, they're seeing the same thing. And I saw the exact same thing out there in the kayak the other day. Most of the fish that I saw, even though most of them were uncooperative, were up in really tight 4 to 7 feet of water. And actually, the only real activity I had was on top water in 4 to 6 feet of water, and I saw some pretty darn nice fish. So, and that was pretty much everywhere I went, all around the point, including down at the very end of the point. I saw smallies, and all the fish that I saw were really shallow. Even though I was out in 8 feet, 9 feet of water, and I could still see the bottom, the fish were all holding really shallow. And most of the fish were holding either right on sand flats, or they were cruising the edges of the sand flats. Almost nothing in the weeds, which was kind of weird, because there was a lot of bait fish, a lot of small shad and stuff moving around, kind of bait balls. And the bait balls were tending to kind of hug over the weed beds, but the smallies were all really working those sand flats and staying pretty low. So I guess advice to you is, I would say this too. There was another guy out there that was doing much better than I was on the smallies, and he was throwing a wacky rig. So, and he was fishing down low. I was fishing with swim baits and top water, and I tried to drop shot, but he was doing pretty good with the wacky rigs, and he was fishing them, getting them right down on the bottom and working them low. So, my advice, maybe Ned rigging or wacky rigs, and hit those areas that have got open sand flats, and really focus on fishing those open pockets. Even though those weeds aren't up real high in a lot of areas, a lot of them are starting to die off. There's still quite a bit of weed cover out there, and for some reason, those fish are just really working those edges. So, let's see what else on smallies. I want to make sure I cover everything, because I wanted to get into those details with you guys. I guess talk about walleyes a little bit. Garrett, again, not to sound like a broken record, but he's been getting some nice walleyes up there on that north end. I'm guessing the middle channel still. The whippers are getting walleyes up there as well, and so are some of the jiggers. So with that clear water, so the jig and bite is picked up, and it's not only picking up there on the St. Clair River, but I follow Jerry Toner, and she's fishing down there on the D. And she's, the last couple of reports she's done, she's doing pretty darn good down there jigging on the D too. So if you're down on that southern end of the lake, maybe slide on down to the Detroit River and try that out down there. But that jig bite has definitely picked back up, even though I know the water temps are still kind of holding around 70 degrees. It doesn't seem to matter. It's that time of the year, and the bite is going again. Probably mostly because of bait fish and the weeds dying off. So that doesn't change. So it's just kind of like, even though it's warm and there's flowers and stuff, all my hummingbirds here at the house, like 3 weeks ago, they just vanished. They all left. So it's just kind of hours of daylight triggering everything out there. And at this time of the year, certain things happen, whether that water temperature changes or not. The fish are going to be where they're going to be at this time of the year. So that is what it is. So musky bite. Musky bite continues to get better and better. And the charter captains out there are definitely taking their fair share of fish. Again, I follow Garrett. They've got some nice fish up there on that north end, but also watching Jason Quintano of Fins and Grins Charters. They just went 21 for 30 out there in one day. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, they weren't all giant fish, but 21 muskies in one day, that's phenomenal. Guys are still catching fish over there by the spillway, casting from shore, and you should be able to do that around different areas of the lake as well. I also had one of the customers sent in some pictures. Jay sent in some pictures. He was out in front of the spillway area. Didn't tell me exactly how deep, but it looked like he was probably in around 12 feet of water out there. He went 2 for 2, and those were his first 2 muskies he's ever caught. So he got his first muskie and his second muskie the same day. Can't beat that. They weren't giant fish, but they were nice fish. So, awesome, Jay. I'm glad you got out there, and I'm glad you were able to catch your first ski, and I'm sure you're hooked now after doing that. So in that clear water, you can see everything going on, and that just kind of adds to the fun when you can see those fish hit or follow. It's phenomenal. If I start coughing or sneezing, I've been dealing with the bug for about 3 weeks now, and I've been fighting it. So I'm hoping I don't break out into like a coughing fit, and Joshua's got to do a bunch of editing. So I'm trying my darndest to get through this video without doing that. So if it seems a little like I'm a little bit rushed, I probably am, because I'm trying not to cough. So the musky bite is going. It's only going to get better as we get going through the fall. And fall is sturgeon time. We just had that 2025 North Channel Sturgeon Classic, and they just set a record with a 78 and an 1/8 inch fish. Just an absolute giant. So after catching that 57 a couple of weeks ago, I can't even imagine what it was like landing that 78. And you can tell from the picture it was during daytime. So that was an early fish. Caught during daylight hours, which is that's even better yet, right? So, so cool to see those fish. I think they landed 64 fish in that event, and I think they had around 30 boats. So, pretty impressive numbers. Lots of really good quality fish caught, but 78 and an 1/8, that's just an absolute monster. Don't forget, too, about this time of the year. And I'm always reminded by Mike Martin from Mike Martin Outdoors. He runs charters, and this is the time of the year that he comes down to Lake St. Clair and he targets perch, and he sometimes goes and he targets panfish as well. And he was down and they were targeting pumpkin seeds and bluegills and everything in the canals and marinas. This is the time of the year that those boats start to come out of the water, and I say this every time, every year at this time of the year, guys. This is the time of the year when the boats come out. So this is when you can go back into those marinas and canals, and you can get access to the pilings and all that, and the boat docks and all that stuff, and fish for these panfish. And Mike was down with Jax, and it's good to see Jax out fishing with you again. And they really got some nice panfish. And it looks like Jax also learned a lesson that I learned a long time ago, and that's you don't cast a bait caster with too light of a jig unless it's very specialized equipment. And I'm glad you were there, Mike, to teach Jax that lesson. It's a valuable lesson, and I'm sure he won't make that same mistake again. My rule of thumb is generally 1/4 ounce minimum and higher, but generally 3/8 ounce and higher for the bait casters. Otherwise, I stick with the spinning gear because I don't like dealing with what you had to deal with. It's just not efficient throwing those super light baits on those bait casters. So, Jax, we live and we learn, and you're a great angler now, and you're going to get better and better fishing with Mike. So, great weather coming again this weekend. Take advantage of it. Lots of fish out there. Maybe this will be our last 80-ish degree weekend coming up. Hopefully the temperatures are going to start falling, and the fishing is just going to get better out on Lake St. Clair. Hey gang, if you like our content, hit the little subscribe button and the bell icon, and you'll be notified as soon as we put out new stuff.